mentioned that you might write a second one featuring Elizabeth Taylor.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That is a strong possibility. No, it's actually happening. I am writing my second one, but I guess if you talk about the first one first,
Yeah.
it has to do well. But luckily, Kirkus has been very kind and given me a nice review, which is very rewarding.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about this book is that it actually seemed like you really actually enjoyed writing it, whereas most writers I talk to, it's all about the pain and the suffering. So did you enjoy writing it?
Oh my, that's so interesting you say that, because I'll meet people. There was a famous comedian, and she wrote a book, and I was talking about reading the book and about writing it, and she goes, "How long did it take you?" And I was like, "I don't know, about 9 months. It seemed forever." And she goes, "It took me 7 years to write a book." I loved it. I mean, I love acting, but the idea that I had an excuse, like I didn't have to see anybody, I could just delve into my memories and write these stories from childhood and talk about people like Rudy Valley and Marlon Brando, and I felt as if it were really important to get these stories down while I'm still mentally intact, and
Right.
if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
but I did. I loved, and even as I wrote them, more memories would start to come back to me.
Yeah. And so would you just sit down like a 9 to 5 situation and write, or would you write when it kind of worked for you, or?
No, I was pretty, I had a pretty set schedule that I would, start in the morning and pretty much work all day. I mean, sometimes I found myself, again, with headphones on, music, and it'd be 8 or 9 o'clock, and I realized I had not moved from the same position. But I'm very much like, once the words start tumbling out, I don't want to stop. And that can sometimes be a curse on you physically. I was like, I'd walk away like Frankenstein, but get me wine and ice, someone, immediately. But that's how I did it. The part that was a challenge for me was with my acting work. I would have to write like 4 chapters and then stop for a month while I went and did a movie or went and worked for Turner Classic Movies or prepped for an interview. So I found that a little challenging, like, to get back into it every time.
Yeah. And so was it sad to write about Roddy McDowall? There's so many nice memories there.
Well, it's funny you say that. That was such an interesting chapter for me, because I knew I wanted to write about him. He had such an important part in my life, and in a sense, got me journaling and remembering all these things. He was a historian. And when I finished the chapter, I actually broke down and started crying and thinking, like, who's going to read? Who's going to be? Why are you writing about? Nobody cares about Roddy McDowall. But it's that interesting moment where I can only write what is true to me. And it was like, one of the great things was that when people read that chapter, that has turned out to be a chapter that people really love. So I feel as if when I'm writing, I'm channeling all these people to get their approval as I'm writing it. I'm trying to tell the best story I can for people to see a different side of them. We've seen them in the movies, but this is maybe more a private side of what he was really like.
Yeah. Now, when you get on a plane, nowadays, you don't have a sudden fear that someone's going to be sucked out the back of it, do you?
Well, in the Alive chapter, there was, that's why I mentioned, I was reading the book Alive, and the guy next to me said that should be illegal. Like, you shouldn't be allowed to read that book on any airplane. No, actually, it's contrary. I know that I could, cannibalize one of the fellow passengers, so I'm all set.
Right. So let's move from that tough shoot to you have this really nice sort of description of Cape Fear, but what you bring out of it is that that's the day that you learned that you had, quote, made it. Just tell people what that day was like, because it was kind of harsh, right?
Well, I think that, you know, anyone who goes into some people are very lucky. They, you know, they get a big leading role but that was never my experience. My experience was like, you know, coming through the back door of show business, of, you know, like doing little parts, and then maybe they get bigger. And so I knew that when I got the part in Cape Fear, I knew that I would be very much, you know, people would be speculating, well, why did she get this part, and really having to try to deliver the goods. And I had a lot of background, you know, acting, but obviously I just assumed because it's, you know, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese that they would be doing all the work and I would just have to sit there and absorb their genius and, you know, I would win an Oscar. Like, isn't that how it goes? But instead I got there and we were mainly going to be improvising the scene. And so, you know, Mr. De Niro was sitting in the chair going, you know, blah, 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 blah. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I have no idea what he's going to say. I've got to, like, dig deep, and I've got to sort of rely more on myself. And instantly I had to go back to my trailer, go back to my acting roots, do an emotional preparation about that character, listen to music to get me, you know, to get me in character. And I really felt like as if I also sort of became an actor that day too, because I wasn't depending on anybody else except for myself. And I got so into the character that I thought that the important thing was I forgot that I was working with Robert De Niro. I just relied on my own technique. And it started to go so well that then they put up 2 cameras because we were improvising. And as I said, there was a moment where, which is what you always want to achieve as an actor, where you literally forget the cameras are there. And people actually thought, you know, I was drunk. Like, are you drinking? Or, you know, and I didn't even remember what I was doing, but luckily they got it all on film. And the next day, after everybody saw the rushes, I came to the set and they had a chair with my name on it. And I was like, wow, I guess I've arrived. And everyone from that moment on was like, oh, Ileana, would you like a coffee? Would you like a water? So it was a very important moment for me to see your name on a chair. You know, listen, to this day, when I go on, if I'm doing a low budget movie, and sometimes, like, they can't afford, obviously, to do the actual embroidery. So what they do is they take gaffer's tape and they, like, scrawl your name on a piece of tape and they put it on a chair. And this just happened last week. I was like, oh, there's my name on a chair. You know? So for me as an actor, it means a lot.
Yeah, yeah. But then when you met Marlon Brando, you took this great acting advice that you had, which was kind of like to be in the moment. And you actually got really nervous and started crying a little bit, right?
Well, yes, I was. I'd been instructed by Martin Scorsese not that the imperative thing was not bring up acting and not be a phony. So I was so locked in and nervous of, like, okay, don't be a phony. Don't talk about acting. And that ended up paralyzing me with fear to not say anything. I was like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to be quiet and sit here. But in my head, the minute he walked in the door, it was like my actor training took over. It was like I literally was so in the moment. I just thought of Marlon Brando and having posters of Marlon Brando on my wall and going to see movies he was in, and it just all fell apart for me. And the minute we locked eyes, something just happened to me, and I just started crying. I could not. It wasn't like Beatles crying. It was just like I just locked into him, and in my head I said, "Don't be a phony." So I said to him, "You know, everything you've ever done, I wouldn't be here. Everything I do is because of you. So thank you." And just getting a chance to say that to him made me very emotional, and it made him very emotional. And then he started crying, and then we were both crying. And then, look, you know, he looked at Marty and he said, "My God, she's a tuning fork. Now I'm crying." And so it was like this very odd So it set the meeting off in a way that suddenly turned into like a Cassavetes movie with everybody sort of being so truthful and in the moment and not being phony, and it was quite, so it was quite beautiful, but it was a lesson about being yourself.
And then you were sitting on some cushions eating a lot of food with Marlon Brando.
Which is, yeah, not bad. We ate a lot of food. He came at lunchtime, and he didn't want to go down to the dining room because he didn't want sort of prying eyes. So we rebooted and we ordered lunch in the room, and then lunch just turned into dinner, turned into late night snacks with, 1 o'clock in the morning sitting on cushions with Marlon Brando talking about Marilyn Monroe and acting. Like, we were talking about Stella Adler, and I was talking about that I'd studied with Sanford Meisner, and it was incredible. Like, it's interesting, in the movie that came out, Listen to Me, Marlon, I did feel as if, yeah, that's the Marlon Brando I met. Like, he didn't really seem like he had anywhere to go. He was really enjoying being there and just talking to us and telling stories and eating and drinking,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love the book. I do hope you write a second one. And thanks.
Oh, it's in the works. It's
okay,
in the
good.
works. We'll get that Elizabeth Taylor story.
Please include it. Okay, great. Well, we'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you when the next one comes out then.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for reading it.
Okay, have a good day.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.